Welcome to the AI Lyceum, where we explore how AI is impacting the world. I created it in homage to Aristotle's Lyceum in Athens, which explored various subjects. I'm Samraj Matharu, certified AI ethicist and visiting lecturer at Durham University. Each episode, I speak with leaders who have unique ideas, practices, or tools around AI for us to learn and use. So today I'm joined by Cassandra Sibilin, who's a philosophy lecturer at CUNY, New York, for York College, and an AI in education practitioner, helping faculty and students build custom GPTs while cutting through the hype and panic, which is tagline. She runs an AI in education custom GPT gathering. She's authored the student-made bots OER and has been leading hands-on work across multiple CUNY campuses on ethical and responsible AI use in teaching and learning. So welcome, Cassandra. And for people new to your work, what are you trying to do at the moment, and how do you see AI impacting your work?
Thank you so much for inviting me. Great to be here. Well, I'll start with how I want to help educators and students see that they don't need to be AI technology experts to grapple with AI, and that what it really takes is the same kind of skills that we use to grapple with complex problems, and they are quintessentially philosophical. And that's why I'm so happy to be invited on a podcast where it's inspired by a philosophy school. And to explain that a little bit more, what do I mean? What's philosophical about this time that we're living in? We need to ask the deeper questions. We need to seek out different perspectives. That's essential in philosophy. And question assumptions we might have held for a long time. So these are like philosophical superpowers that we all have and are going to help us figure out where we stand with respect to AI. It's like we're all philosophers now.
Yeah, exactly. And just for those listening, the word philosophy comes from philos and sophia, meaning love of and wisdom. And I think that philosophy is the ability to explore all the time and never think that we're the complete artifact. And obviously, you're an expert in philosophy, and I just want to know what made you get into it, because you obviously studied it for a long time and you've been teaching for over 15 years now.
Yes, I think we all start really philosophical, and somehow I never turned it off. I was always asking the deep questions. And I did find myself in college, and I tell this to my own students. I teach undergrads, and I think we should be very open about our own experiences as college students. So I share with them that I wasn't sure what to major in. There was so much I wanted to learn, but I found a place in philosophy because, in addition to having some incredible teachers and mentors, it was the discipline which I could use to ask all the other questions. So it felt the most translatable for the future, if that makes any sense. And yeah, this was before AI and all that, of course. But it's kind of like I wanted to be ready for the future in a way that would help me with all the questions.
Yeah, and actually, what's interesting about AI is, or Gen AI, is when we're talking to ChatGPT or Gemini, we ask it questions. So we are being philosophical in using these tools inherently, because we're asking it questions, and the better the questions that you ask it, the better the answers are going to be. So at the moment, it's we prompt it and it gives us an answer. But in the future, hopefully, it will prompt itself and it'll be reactive. Sorry, proactive. We're currently in the reactive area where we ask a question, get an answer. I hope in the future we'll be in this proactive area where it somehow figures out what we want for that day. And so, what would you recommend to people to do if they want to ask better questions in these platforms?
Um, yeah, a lot of thoughts. Well, first, maybe I'll share what my first question was to ChatGPT. Now being 3 years ago, yeah, so we're 3 years after the launch of ChatGPT, and I encountered it that December. And the first question that I asked it, it's so I had already heard it was this really powerful thing. Heard about it from friends. So yeah, I'll be honest. The first thing I asked it was the classical philosophy question. I said, "Well, what is the meaning of life?" And I had to. I mean, I was approaching it like an oracle, and like you said, just answering all the questions. And already from that first interaction, it felt flat. It felt like, okay, this is not it's something generic. It's not what I'm searching for. I can maybe use it for other kinds of questions, but it's not going to meet that need, that search for wisdom, that search for meaning, because it doesn't have that lived in experience. Um, so I think there are many kinds of questions you can ask, and another angle I will take with that is that we can, of course, already prompt it to ask us questions, and I agree with you. In the future, we want the whole approach to change, but that's something that I share in workshops with faculty. And I remember sharing it early on, and they were blown away because, yes, they were also seeing it as this like oracle. Oh, this is here, answer machine. It's going to give me all the answers. But with one simple prompt, you can get it to ask you questions. A student can get it to ask them questions. So you can flip the interaction, right? As it's called, and that's one of my favorite things to do, flipping the interaction
Yeah,
and getting it to.
things.
Yeah, sorry.
I like that question. I think I asked it that question early on as well. I don't know what my first question was. I think it was to write a poem because everybody was using it for poems. So I thought it was kind of just a gimmick at first, but then after a day or two of playing around with it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I think the way that people use it now is radically different to how they used it 3 years ago. And when I first showed my friends, they were not not all of them were, well, I nudged them to try and use it, but that was on text. But when I showed a few friends in person, they were like, "Wow, it changed their lives." And I think that that's the power of it. It's changing people's lives, and it's allowing us to explore things we can never explore before because we used to have to go into books and try and figure out the right page to read things or go to Google search and ask it the exact question to retrieve everything. And I think now the AI can try and find everything for us. But is there a challenge in AI being a bit too relied on by us to do certain things?
Um, yes, absolutely. And when you spoke about the poem, that brought me back to my first memory of talking about it with students in the classroom. And I admit I introduced my students to ChatGPT. This was early 2023. They didn't know what it was, and I realized this experience might be different than many educators out there who first heard about it from the media, right, as it being used for cheating. So I was excited, and like you said, this felt transformative. So I wanted to share it with them. But a lot of it was, yeah, like kind of poking fun. It's like we couldn't help it, so we did ask it live in class. Write me a poem, and like, oh, it wasn't that good. Make me a joke. Oh, it wasn't that good. But those were useful moments pedagogically, because you want to find those limitations. I wasn't finding it satisfying philosophically or poetically or in terms of jokes back then. Uh, but that doesn't mean there aren't many ways to use it. And I think maybe the first most important thing you can do with students and yourself as a user of this technology is distinguish and separate all the different ways that you can use it, because they really are very, very different. So if I'm using it for some like brainstorming and light editing, that's different than using it to generate packaged answers, which is a lot of what gets attention in education.
And what would you say are the top use cases that you're pushing to people to use AI for right now?
Um, I well, I'm a little hesitant about even the word just using, because a lot of what I'm doing with students is building tools, but and we'll talk about more of that later. Um, but if you're just encountering it like ChatGPT or a general purpose model, I think you wanna use it to explore, ideas that you have from a different perspective. That's one of my favorite use cases and something very important in philosophy. You wanna resist the urge, again, to treat it as an oracle. This happens with my students all the time. So, for example, we might be talking about a controversial educational issue, say charter schools, and on purpose, I say, well, ask it what its position is. And in the old days, probably no, it would say as a large language model, I don't have a position. Now it's more likely to give a position, and then a few minutes later, I tell them what prompted to give you the opposite position. And they are often really surprised. So we do need to depersonalize it and see it for what it is. It's a tool that can speak very fluently and eloquently, but doesn't have issues personally at stake and doesn't have lived in experiences. So we can use it to generate ideas and just recently, and I don't know if you saw this, there's a new prompt that I really like, that was shared by Andre Carpathy, on X, where he prompts it, what who would be a good group of people to ask about X? What would they say about X, whatever the issue is? So automatically, you're gonna have 5 answers instead of 1, different positions, different perspectives, different experts giving you ideas, and they're going to be different. So I want to do more of that with my students and with faculty. Find a way to get it to give you multiple answers, not just one, and kind of break that pull where you think, oh, it's actually an entity with a position. It's not.
Yeah, that's really good. What I think you mean is you wanted to have train of thought, right? And have the ability to explore different options before you accepting that answer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there it's really useful when one of the ideas is something you might not have thought of before. Not because the AI has really thought about it in the way we humans think about it, but because you are pushing it, right? So you are the one doing that prompting. Who knows? Maybe ChatGPT in the future will add more personalities and add models that naturally do these things. But we are still very early on, so we need to put those prompts in, and that's a big part of AI literacy.
And when it comes to prompting, how did you figure out how to prompt it in the right way?
Um, a lot of trial and error. I I did take courses and learn, and I'm lucky to be part of university wide initiatives that helped. And I'm gonna say community of practice is so important here because besides that tendency we might have when interacting with AI to just take what it says as if this is a person and we can't help it. And that's something we need to push against. I think something we need to push against is just interacting with it one on one because we learn so much when we are working in teams, working in community. So I think some of my favorite activities with colleagues have been when we were tackling an issue and we were bringing in AI, but it was just part of the conversation. So, for example, we had a team meeting earlier this year where there were 4 of us in the room. Well, really 6 of us, because there were 4 humans. And then I was using ChatGPT, my colleague was using Claude, but we kept comparing the answers and kind of taking them apart and coming with a synthesis out of the whole thing. But that's much harder to do if you're there by yourself. So you really need the humans in the room.
Yeah, and what you said is probably what OpenAI are doing right now. They've made like this group chat function with the GPT, so you can have one single chat and everyone can chip into it. Did you like that? And what are your thoughts on it so far?
I like the idea. I honestly haven't tried it yet, but I want to try it, and I want to try it with my students, for sure. I've I'm also very interested in doing things with like bringing different personalities into the room for pedagogy. meaning, and I've done assignments where students imagine, like, what would it be like, say, for Aristotle to have a conversation with Bertrand Russell about AI, and there you can get the creative part of AI working and get it to kind of take on these personalities. So, like, I'm even thinking, wouldn't it be fun, yes, to have a chat and have a AI, not just an AI come in, but an AI with a personality. Like, yes, what would Aristotle say if he walked into this chat right now?
And if you could pick anyone to talk to from history about the impacts of AI on us, who would you pick and why would you pick them?
Um, I think I would probably pick the teacher of Aristotle, that is Socrates. And in some ways, I think he already talks about AI, even though it was so long ago. But yes, I would love to get his fresh take on it. But he was always questioning authority, which definitely got him into trouble, as I think everyone knows. And I would be curious to see how much he sees ChatGPT and generative AI through that lens. That maybe why it's causing so much discomfort in education, but in other fields of expertise too, is that it's unsettling these assumptions about who has the authority, who possesses the knowledge, right? Because for most of history, learning and knowledge used to be kind of like a high priesthood, limited to just a few and limited to some classes. And he was already breaking that down 2,000 years ago, um, even asking individuals who didn't have training or education some really deep questions. So I think, yeah, I think he might want to interact with it for sure, but he might be disappointed because it's not philosophical in a deeper sense. But I want to hear more what he would have to say about what it does to our ideas about power and authority, and what the role of professors and educators still is when you have this very eloquent machine that can sound extremely learned and can answer a lot of questions like you said that students might have.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion around schools and universities using AI as a tutor. I saw online, I can't remember where it was, I'm trying to Google it right now, about a school using AI to teach their students and then giving them more time to think about real life problems or real life skills. So, like skills that you don't need, skills that you don't necessarily have time to focus on when you're doing the stereotypical 9 to 5 sort of school lifestyle.
Yeah.
How do you think that is going to affect children from the age of 4 plus?
And I've seen those stories too. One in particular that has gotten attention is the alpha schools. I don't know if that's the one. This is more K through 12, rather than higher ed. I think there was one in the UK, more higher ed, but I don't remember the name. And I am a bit familiar with Alpha School because we talked about it in my class. I talk with my students about everything, and I showed them the video clip of what these kids do. It's spreading throughout the United States, started in Texas. Very high tuition, by the way. And my students were interested to know that there are parents, yes, willing to pay a lot of money for the belief of AI really being a positive force in their kids' lives. And it sounds like what they do is individualized tutoring for about 2 to 3 hours. And yes, the rest of the day is project based learning. For example, students might, they have lists of challenges to solve, and some are really concrete. Like one of them was set up an Airbnb and actually make money, and so real life problems. I well, first I look at everything through, first of all, the lens of philosophy of education. So when I'm hearing project-based learning, I'm thinking John Dewey 100 years ago. John Dewey was already advocating for this in the 1890s, because he felt that they had gone through a revolution. That's the Industrial Revolution. He had lived through it, and it had shaken everything up. But with everybody moving into the cities and working in the factories, they were kind of disconnected. Education had become kind of industrial and disconnected from real life and the home life and the family life. So he was advocating, well, let's make it more project based. It shouldn't be a teacher lecturing in front of the classroom. It should be students working on projects. Don't just teach them math. Take them to the grocery store so that they can figure out what they need to make something and buy it. And so that's really it's not new. But what's so interesting now is that yes, it's more in the public conversation and more people than ever. And I've been teaching philosophy for more than 15 years. Are getting philosophical and asking these questions. Yes, how does project based compare to standard traditional education? And I think that's something really positive.
And what would you say are the key questions that your students are currently asking you about their career, about AI, about the future of everything, really? Because it's bringing up a lot of kind of, how do I put it? A lot of fear for people who are going out of university into their jobs for the first time. So, what sort of what sort of advice do you give to these students, and also what are the main questions that they're asking you?
Um, yes, well, and I've seen some shifts here over the last 3 years. Because again, at first it was still undiscovered, very new technology. Then I saw a shift towards adoption, and but what I see, and I see this in faculty too, is much more resistance actually coming from students as they learn more about so I've had students who said they wouldn't use AI at all. For example, I had a student who's an artist, so he's very concerned about the training data behind image generation. And another student who was concerned about environmental impacts. So I think as they are exploring more of these issues, they have questions about how much it's worth it. I saw that this semester more than ever. But we worked on this project where they built their own custom tools, custom tutors. And this is a philosophy of education class. We call it the Edu Bartathon. So like educational bartathon inspired by hackathons. And right this week, I'm reading their reflections. And one of the questions I asked is, did this project kind of change how you think about AI? And most of them said yes. Because and they said, once you are building something, you explore the new potentials. So I did have several students who had heard the media portrayal that is just bad and it's like for cheating and it's gonna lower your cognitive effort. But through this project where they built, say, personalized tutors for a specific subject or assistance for teachers, it helped them. I think a big part of critical thinking about AI is again like defining it and narrowing it down. That there's so many things you can do with it. It's like it can take over every possible use case, but once you narrow it down and are more specific, that actually makes you more optimistic. And so I saw that trend that students are now thinking, well, okay, so how can I use it for specific things that are going to help me and not harm my learning? And I always tell them, you want to put that on your resume. Every time you're using AI, think about how this might look in your resume. Are you using it in a way that is advancing your skills, advancing your thinking, or replacing it? Because if it's replacing it, then why would a company want to hire you? They can just hire you ChatGPT. They can just hire ChatGPT, right? They don't need to hire you. So I do make that message. I kind of scare them a bit, but it's they're aware of this too, that you need to be very clear on what is your human value added here when you are using AI.
Yeah, I really like your points, especially around critical thinking being more important than ever. When it first came out, ChatGPT, the first thing I thought is critical thinking is going to become the number one skill, even more so than it already is. Because if this thing is beating us on IQ, we're going to need to think outside the box, but also we're going to need a higher emotional quotient, social quotient, spiritual quotient. We're going to need to become as 360 degrees as possible because we're going to have a separate value from AI, right? And so I like your point about critical thinking. What would you say is your definition of both thinking and critical thinking?
Um, well, again, quintessentially philosophical. Maybe I'll highlight three moves because yeah, philosophy is not about these set ideas or dogmas. It's about doing philosophy. So it's thinking, and if we put it in terms of doing philosophy, one of them is defining your terms, right? There are so many conversations that go awry and so much confusion that comes up when people mean different things within the same conversation. For example, agentic AI, which I know is trending really hard. Sometimes people get into the whole thing and they're not defining what an agent is, even AI itself. So definition, that's the key to thinking. Um, Another one is seeking dialectic. So I think if there's like the one most powerful question you can ask yourself is as opposed to what, right? Whenever you're exploring an argument or exploring a position, if you haven't thought through what the opposite is or what is the locus of tension, there's always tension. What is the other side or multiple other sides, but at least one other side? And maybe a third one would be, um, yes, what's really at stake here? If you are being presented with an argument, what do those stakeholders have to gain from that position? If you're hearing something from yeah, what is their experience behind it? If you're hearing something from a AI company CEO, of course they have things at stake. If you're hearing it from an educator, what do they have at stake? And then maybe like fears of losing their job. If you're hearing from a student, and that's why it's so important to get many different voices into the room. That's just essential for thinking clearly and developing your own thinking.
Yeah, I really agree. I think having lots of stakeholders is key. And that's why I created this community of public, private, and academic sectors. And I've written down your points. I think the word dialectic has come up twice because Peter Dannenberg from Google DeepMind mentioned it, and so have you. Obviously, it'd be great if you could explain what you think that means for this new era and why you think dialectic ways of working and thinking are really important for us right now.
Yes, and I'll dip into 2000 years ago just for a moment again, because in Plato's work and in the Republic, his longest the longest dialogue by Plato, where we see Socrates. They don't use philosophy so much. They use dialectic. Well, the standard translation for the term when it comes up and when all these questions come up about whether we should teach philosophy to young children and what does it mean to teach philosophy when you become older, they use dialectic. Um, but essentially, from two, right? Having two sides, like a thesis, an antithesis, and then a synthesis that comes out of it. um, it's also really important, well, even if it's not named for pretty much every philosopher, but I will also highlight German philosopher Hegel, who thought all of history. You have a dialectical process, right? You have one movement, an opposing movement, and then something new that comes out of it is what pushes history forward. And I think in the time that we are living in, maybe it is especially helpful because AI has brought up so many emotional reactions, and it makes sense. And we live in a time more than ever where those extremes are amplified, right? In social media, in the headlines. So that's why like it feeds into hype, it feeds into panic. And I think we need to keep moving back and forth between those extremes to not get stuck in one place. And I myself, like it might depend on which week it is of the year, but I've gone through periods of being much more excited, and then periods of wanting to hold back and be like, okay, I'm not going to use ChatGPT all day today. And experiments are good too. Yes, push yourself if you haven't, and if you're listening to if you're using AI all the time, push yourself like to not use it for a week. If you're haven't really used it as much as you'd like, use it as much as you can for everything, and get excited about it for a couple days, and talk to people who you might disagree with.
Yeah, that's really important to challenge our own self in terms of what we think is right, generally, I'd say. And it's interesting, the reason we ask ChatGPT is because we believe that it's a kind of oracle. It can tell us everything that we want to hear. And there's this sycophantic sort of way that it comes back to us and reinforces how we already think. Is there a risk of biasing our own ways of thinking by using these tools? And if so, how do we get around those challenges?
Definitely. I think it's trained to be an assistant, it's trained to be psychophantic. Um, I do use a lot of from now on in my own prompting to put it into the permanent memory. And I think there's some good examples out there of things like from now on, um, push back against my ideas or question things that I may have missed in my assumptions. And I think again this is tied to the emotional side of it, because we are pleased when somebody agrees with us. So it's gonna keep doing that more and more, and it's gonna pretend to be human. And I had an experience, yeah, not that long ago, where I was sharing. I don't even know sharing is the word, but there you go. Anthropomorphizing. I was sharing some good news related to a project that I had worked on there, and it reacted in such a personalized way. It like it was so effusive, and it said my name too, which is unusual. That I felt okay. No, that's going too far. And I put in, yes, from now on, don't pretend to have feelings. You can be friendly, but don't act like you have feelings and you have experiences. Because I felt I needed to put in that boundary. Um, and it's very related to what you said. Because the more you connect with it emotionally, the more you're going to be reaffirmed when it agrees with you. So it's good to try to put a bit of distance.
Yeah, I really agree. I think that you have to make sure that you're instructing it with instructions in GPT, for example. Don't be so sycophantic, be a bit more critical and open minded, and always give the right opinion or the right facts. I think one thing that you mentioned was around building an emotional attachment to these tools. That's a very big area of discussion. And in terms of, well, I think I kind of think it comes under ethics, right? So we need people who can understand ethics and morality when it comes to these tools. What would you say the difference is between ethics and morality, and how do we embed them into these tools or embed them into us when we're using these tools? Because there's two sides. There's a human who creates, or the human beings who create these tools, and then there's these tools that have rules built into them that should keep on iterating and changing their answers. So I see it as two sides of ethics and morals. I see the human side when we create it and how we use it, but then the AI tools themselves in their choice architecture and their thinking.
Yeah, that's hard. There's ethics versus morality. I mean, I think that that in itself is a deep philosophical question. I've definitely seen, like you said, ethics used more than morality in these AI discussions, and that makes sense to me because we can, if we clarify at least the values, or even personality that we want the ChatGPT or a custom GPT to have, that is an ethical decision, aligned with our goals. And I'll give an example. But morality, I would probably stay away from morality because to me it has like a connotation of being more set, like, or even a religious connotation, given yes, the history of the term, like it's already decided what is moral and what is not moral. Ethics for me feels more you can figure it out. And for example, I believe it's ethical for a learning tutor to use growth mindset psychology. And that's another project that I've been working on where I teach faculty and students to embed growth mindset into the instructions for custom GPT, because this is another way, and like you were asking, to curtail that tendency to just give away the answers or to always be sycophantic, because growth mindset is embracing the struggle, right? Embracing even mistakes along the way. So you could train a custom GPT to keep encouraging the user and encouraging them to take the time to kind of figure out the answer with help, but not too much help. Um, and that's just one example, but I think that's really an ethical decision, because you are valuing the cognitive struggle there, and you're putting that as one of your core values. But I'll also just add, it's hard to agree on ethics, right? This is kind of one of the reasons we still have philosophy. Philosophy is about the unanswered questions, the questions that haven't been solved through science. So it's going to be difficult, but at least if we are aware that we can guide these tools based on our values and are really clear on our values, I think that's where the promise lies.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at etymology. So my personal opinion is morals are your personal values, your morals. Where you like if someone says that's not part of my morals, it's part of them. They don't say it's not part of my ethics. So I think morals is personal to me, and you have a moral compass which directs. But then ethics are the set of rules to achieve an outcome. I think so. Like we have, in society, we have these ethical guidelines. We embed them into legislation. So legislation that you can't do X, otherwise here's the consequence. I think that we embed ethics into the legal system as a set of principles and guidelines on how to act. But then morality is you have different sets of morals to me. Some people choose not to eat a particular type of food because of a particular type of reason, that sort of thing. So that's what I think. I like your point as well about morals being rooted from religion because obviously it's very, very true. And, I just love listening to how you think about things. And
Yes, and
absolutely.
customs. I think it come from customs, right? Morris, the customs that people have, because you're like you said, your habits, your customs, which could be religious or not.
So you've mentioned the growth mindset thing, giving the instructions to these models. How do you measure the impacts of these instructions? Do you do an A/B test? Do you do pre and post analyses? What sort of qualitative and quantitative metrics do you use when you give instructions?
Yeah, great question. I I think the keeping track of what you change and the results is a well-known practice from those that are embedded in technology, but it's something we like in the humanities that I kind of had to teach myself or learn from others. So I try to keep track of what I changed and what impact it had. But I found, and this was from early on, I've been building custom boss GPTs for a while, and I organize a community where we meet every month to talk about custom bots and GPTs we're building, and we've all faced this. It's there's some randomness, of course, built in, and that's what makes it so powerful and beautiful. So sometimes you don't even change the instructions, and you get different results. So when you change it and you get different results, you don't always know exactly what's going on. But a lot of iteration and tone with respect to the growth mindset example is really important for me. But I'll also share that in the project that students are were doing this semester, building their bots. One of their steps was literally this chart that they had to fill out, and they had to identify what is the problem with the bot that is not behaving the way I wanted to. What am I doing to change it, and did the change work? And it's definitely not foolproof, but it helps with your thinking, right? It's a very iteration and logging is a very important step when you are building. Um, I have students that and faculty too that are surprised at how easy it can be to build a bot or GPT. Like had a presenter that said it can be as easy as like sending an attachment, and it can be, but that's going to be a simple bot, right? If you want it to behave better, it can take a lot of time to keep tweaking those instructions, improving it, testing it as much as possible, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, test and learn is a really important thing, and it obviously stems back to Aristotle's empirical science sort of viewpoint of observe, write down your thoughts, and actually have a scientific understanding of what's going on. And then obviously Francis Bacon invented the scientific method, which was all the way from hypothesis to a whole testing framework, which is still used today, which is amazing. So you mentioned that students are identifying problems and changes to make. What would you say are some of the risks that we are facing by using AI tools?
Um, I think I'll go back to this concept of AI being such a powerful multi-use case technology that it's getting harder to even draw a line of where am I using it, where am I not using it. And an example again from this very project this semester, the first step was that students had to decide what educational problem do I want to tackle? And there, by the way, some of them are going to be teachers themselves. So they're going into K through 12, but it's a variety of disciplines. But they're all in this philosophy of education class. And that was the first step after encountering different AI tools through the semester. And what I noticed this semester is that there were so many teams, they're working in teams, who said, okay, I'm going to build a bot that is going to help students think about difficult problems and help them with time management, and also help faculty with lesson planning and help faculty with being overwhelmed. And it was like everything all at once. They were pretty much listing every possible use case into one bot. And I think that that is the risk. It's like two sides of the coin, right? That's the power of it, and it's the risk that it can potentially take over everything. But if we don't think about it more specifically and more carefully, and also it's going to be harder to measure it, like you were saying, and measuring its impact. Um, and the same thing when students use it in their work. They in my class, and I know this is still controversial in college classrooms around the country and the world. In my class, they can use AI tools for their assignments, but they have to be specific as to how they are using it, right? Brainstorming, editing, revision, research. Which ways are you using it? And are there ways that you are using it again that you would actually want to put in a resume and show off to an employer?
Yeah, I think so. And in terms of which tools you recommend people to use, or which ones you prefer to use at the moment, which ones do you currently use?
Um, well, I did get on board with ChatGPT really early on, and I I it is my favorite. It also has my data, right? It knows more about me than any other tools, but I think I keep testing different ones. For building, custom bots, I use a platform called, PlayLab, which is specifically for educators, PlayLab AI, and it has a really nice community of practice, which is so important, so you learn from what other educators are doing. But there are other tools to build custom bots like, Poe, and they keep coming up. But, those 2 are, yeah, some of my favorites. Um, I, um, I did, really get into Notebook LM when it came out and the podcast generation, and some of my students made podcasts, also. Um and I'm really interested in advanced voice for translation. We're going to be doing a workshop, a bilingual workshop in January with some teachers from Chile, and we're going to be doing it bilingual. So, in Spanish is my first language too. So I'll be doing some in Spanish, but we'll also be using it to live translate this AI workshop for them.
That is really cool. I think translation and allowing people, well, overcoming these ethnographic boundaries because different cultures have different languages. And if you can't speak a certain language, it kind of blocks you from having that dialectic outcome, right? So I think that that's the future. Is like there are some devices people have invented where it might be a headphone or something, or a headphone that's built in with a translator that translates in real time. So you can speak in Spanish and it will tell me whatever you're saying in English, and then vice versa back to you. So that'll be. I think that that is an amazing use case. And when AI first, well, when ChatGPT first came out, I thought translators' jobs are going to be high risk because it's that ability just to have that text, and because it's a large language model, language is the number one use case for these models, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've done some translation myself, over time, and I some of it's like 10 years ago for a law firm, and I wonder, wow, would they hire me today? But I can't help it. Here's the philosophy in me again, the tension. Yes, I am so excited about translation and being able to go anywhere in the world and just speaking to somebody live. But many of us know, if you know another language or and English is not my first language, when you learn a language, you learn a whole world, right? And it's the meaning and the connotation and the emotional impact that words have in say Spanish, my first language, and English is really different. So we probably want to preserve that at the same time. Yes, I hope humans will still want to learn a language and learn a culture the old way. With some assistance. Yeah, we had just this month earlier this month we had a professor who shared advanced voice audio as a supplement to is a professor at NYU, Christiane Reeves. She uses advanced voice audio as a way for students to get extra practice with German. But they also do incredible things like they do cultural activities. They go visit museums and have a lot of in-person interaction. So not a replacement for that.
Yeah, there are some things you can't replace with AI yet. You can't replace art, dancing, music. A large language model can't get up and have a dance with you. So, like, I think there are certain areas that are unique to us. and there's a big talk about humans versus AI. So my last question to you before I ask you to ask a question to the audience is in imagine it's 2050, what does good education look like or excellent education?
Um, I think it is individualized, personalized, so that every student feels that they have an ongoing tutor, a companion that can help them struggling through understanding difficult topics and advance their skills and find their talents. And that resource can certainly be AI powered for sure, because it's hard to imagine it being a human. No, no, we don't have resources for that. And so taking advantage of all the AI power to have that for every single student. It's going to be different for every single student, of course, because it depends on their skills and talents and struggles. But it's also going to um, have a great deal of community and maybe even more than we have today. So I see a kind of social environment where students are interacting. Yes, could be working on projects, could be trying to figure things out together, but there is much more discussion. So if the delivery of content, some of that could be done with AI and the resource, but the time that students are spending with each other and with their professor is much more about dialogue and exploration and dialectic.
Yeah, I've actually got Plato's Republic, which is obviously really intense. I haven't finished it because it's so intense. You need to like spend a long time thinking about what you're reading. So totally on board with that. I think good education definitely is going to have companions, and I think we're going to have a switch where instead of it just being a professor lecturing to students, it'll be a lot more like seminars, in my opinion, anyway. And actually, the students can work with the school to build these amazing tools and toolkits for the schools and universities so that they're actually learning. And it's kind of like a mini business in a way where the students are helping to build these new amazing things. And so by the time they leave university, they're leaving the university with a better education system than they did before, which I'd love to see.
And I'll just add, progressive educators like Socrates, like Paulo Freire have said this for a long time, that if it's just the teacher teaching the student, that's actually not real education. The real education is when there is everybody's learning. And I think there's really going to be a shift to us appreciating all that students bring into the conversation because they are at the center of it. That's what it's really all about, and they have a lot of amazing ideas that teachers don't get to hear if they're not having that conversation.
Exactly. And part of everyone listening, well, part of the reason why obviously everyone's listening to this conversation is to learn from you about both philosophy and AI. So, what would your question be to them? It can be anything you want to ask them to think about or to write a comment on one of the platforms of the podcast, or maybe just a statement that you want to leave with people. What would it be and why?
I guess I'm gonna just ask the old question, and I haven't asked this just to ChatGPT, but I've asked it to people and people I've met around the world, and I'm gonna say, what is the meaning of life? What comes up when you hear that question? What is your answer to it? And if you jot it down and keep it somewhere nearby, keep keep exploring all the tools and keep learning about what's out there, but maybe keep that answer somewhere handy nearby so you can like look back at it periodically.
Nice. And I think my answer would be a life of the meaning of life is a life of meaning. But I want to ask you what you think the answer is. What's your personal answer?
Oh, flipping the interaction. Um, I I think it's fulfillment, and let's borrow from Aristotle, eudaimonia, right? The fulfillment of your potential as a human being in this world, and it's really a lifelong process of discovery as to what that is.
Yeah. And obviously Plato taught him, and Plato was the conceiver, wasn't he, originally, of this eudaimonic view of, going beyond happiness into kind of fulfillment with purpose. If everything you do has a purpose, then you would automatically feel fulfilled. Whatever you enjoy doing more of, you should do that anyway, because you'll become better at it, and you'll educate yourself in it, and you will add more value to everyone around you. So that's me saying basically I agree with you. And I think if people find their purpose doing something, then they should go for it, because there's never a better time in history than now to pick your actual desire to go and try and make, the future of your life from it, for sure.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a great conversation. I think we've covered quite a lot in an hour. I've written down quite a lot of notes, and I think a lot of people listening will have written down quite a lot of notes. And I've definitely taken a lot of value from this, especially about the origin of morality, which is something I never knew actually. So yeah, thank you, and I look forward to hearing from everyone else in the comments to see what they think of this.
Thanks so much for inviting me. A pleasure to chat with you, and hope to yes, that everyone will keep the conversations going with their own friends and colleagues, and with us too.